Hello and welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan Steele and I will be your nerd today and any other day that you watch one of my silly little shows. Hey, I hope everything is fabulous and finding you well today or tonight, depending on when you're watching this. Let's jump right in to the week in Bryan, get through all that stuff, and then talk about the topic of the day, which comes from a subscriber comment, and we'll get to that here in a few minutes. All right, so week in Bryan. Busy, as always. Work-wise, I don't currently have any painting commissions, so my painting area is personal hobby only at the moment, which we'll get into that here in a second. And as far as actual work goes, I've done a couple of live streams, a couple of podcast interviews. I did at a really good meeting with the Warzone Eternal team folks about us moving forward with getting some very cool stuff done and getting it ready for us to start leaking information. I use that term, but basically to start telling people what's going on and to get some more of the new stuff play tested. Very happy with how the rule set is going, and Alex and I had a fireworks brain explosion moment about something to add to the game, which that's what this whole extra time is all about. The fact that we have the license to that we got the ability to even add more fine tuning and more playtesting and more individual concepts and things that we might not have had time for before because of when the original Kickstarter was supposed to go off. But now that we are postponing that and pushing forward to a new Kickstarter date, we've got time to add some cool stuff, and I'm very excited. And having read, having been a social media presence for Warzone Eternal, and having read through all of the questionnaires that we put out after the Kickstarter pause, what Alex and I are looking at implementing showed up on a lot of those comments and a lot of those questionnaires that people wanted. So very happy. I can't talk about what it is, but I got the digitals back from a sculpt that is being worked on. One of my favorites as far as units in the history of the game and whatever. So I'm very excited to see how that comes together. The sculptor has got a good handle on things so far. So very cool there. Lots of good Warzone Eternal work coming, and hopefully in the next few weeks post Gen Con, that sort of thing, we'll be able to start telling people a little bit more about what's going on. I know there's been some radio silence as far as the groups have been very quiet, but a lot of that is because we don't want to make the mistake that we did early with the first Kickstarter and basically told everybody everything and got a lot of ruffled a lot of feathers and got everybody up in arms about doing this, that, and the other thing, when obviously we weren't at that point yet. This time we want to make sure that it is very polished, fleshed out, ready to rock and roll without question, and hopefully that will reflect in higher backing and more attention and an even more solid product than what we were creating the first time around. So, beside that, my other part of my day to day, the Renegade work with Renegade Games is going famously. I may have mentioned I finished a book for Transformers 2 weeks ago, and dove immediately into a new source book for Power Rangers. Again, I'm always shocked and pleasantly pleased when I dive into some of the deeper lore and things for Power Rangers, kind of like scratch the surface. And I love finding, plot lines that either got left behind or were overshadowed, or like I read this and go, oh, that would make for an awesome adventure. I love coming up with new adventure hooks and things. And getting to mine such a deep and rich canon as the Power Rangers universe is worth its weight in gold. It is fantastic. But yeah, so work on that new project's going well. I'm gonna be pushing it pretty hard to get hopefully that mostly done in the next couple weeks, because not this week and not next week, but the week following, I have a family reunion vacation to go on, and then immediately, like back to back, is Gen Con, which again, I will likely not record at Gen Con just because recording on my laptop can be problematic. We'll say, we'll say less than stellar. And I don't know if I will be able to record while I'm on vacation. Combination of, I don't know how the Wi-Fi is going to be there. We're going to be in a cabin in the mountains, so I don't know. But all that aside, I will try and at least get some kind of content up. Maybe next week I'll do like 2 videos kind of back to back, so you have one while I'm on vacation. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. I know a lot of YouTubers record multiple videos at one time and parse them out. But we'll see. Again, I'm not 100% sure on what's going on there. But that's basically work. Is a lot of writing, a little bit of Warzone designing, and then Gen Con is right around the corner, which I'm super psyched about. Not only am I going to be playing Munchkin for charity at Gen Con, but I've got a couple of really good Warzone Eternal meetings, and one really cool, the Renegade Games RPG staff meet and greet. Basically, we're going to have an entire room where it's just going to be signing books, and that's Thursday night from 7 to 9, I believe, Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to be signing books, answering questions, just generally chatting and have a good time about the the general role playing games of Renegade Games. I mean, I would expect that people will probably hear some rumors and things that fly out of that room, but I guarantee that my Renegade bosses will be in that room with me, so I don't know how much I'll be able to say, but we'll see. Either way, it's gonna be fun. Even if you just want to come and say hi and drop me a high five, I'll be there. Yeah, so that's work stuff, game stuff, playing a lot of Xbox. I've been trying to smash out a bunch of stuff for Sea of Thieves, because the current season is almost up. Played a little Demio on the old Oculus. If you have an Oculus, Demio is an awesome game. It is basically like a D&D style board game where you have like a hand of cards and you play these cards to attack people and you move your little pieces around. I think it's really, really rad. It reminds me very much of like the old school like Hero Quest board games, but in a digital format. And you get cool graphics and monsters that run around and attack and spells and all kinds of cool stuff. And all of the expansions for it are free. Like every time they add a new character or a new level or whatever, they just update the base game. So I think they're up to 6 player character classes and 4 adventures. I think it's 4. and they're kind of tough. You know, I've only beaten two out of the four adventures so far. It's tough. It's worth a challenge, and I'd highly recommend it. So that's really all the game playing. Yeah. Personally, I'm gonna level with you guys between the cruise that we just got off of a couple weeks back, and the reunion in 2 weeks, and the Gen Con immediately after. I am just trying to hold my weight loss program at a steady. I'm just basically, I'm not trying to make any forward progression right now, because I know the next couple weeks are going to be a lot of fast food, a lot of business meals, meals with management. I know that that's going to happen. A lot of drinking probably, and so I'm kind of. I'm not saying that I'm putting the diet and stuff on hold, like I'm just like throwing caution to the wind. I'm still being good. I'm just not being extremely strict about it right now, because I also don't want to make myself sick at the shows by varying my diet so much. So for the next couple weeks, I'm going to take it easy. I know I'm going to gain a little bit of the weight back. But then after Gen Con, my next show isn't until like October. So I'm going to have 2.5 solid months to focus on getting back to it and hopefully start losing again. So there's that. Being realistic about it, not negative, just realistic. Let's see, what else? It's work, games, personal. I think that's really it. Not a lot, not anything else really happening. Kids are getting ready to start school soon again. Convention season is in full swing. We got Gen Con. I think right now I'm signed up for Gen Con definitely. Gamehole Con definitely. I'm working out the details to hopefully do Warfare Weekend down in St. Louis. And the Michigan GT up in Lansing. Beyond that, I don't know any other shows that I'm doing, unless a company sends me. But I think those are going to be my four, kind of like the end of the year huzzah. And then after that, my next convention probably is GaryCon. GaryCon / Adepticon, like the following March. Winter is not a very heavy show season for me normally, just because there's so much to do and so much to try and pack in. But yeah, so that's basically the week in Bryan. I know I would like to say that it's super exciting, but not so much. Real quick, I did get a couple of personal messages, because I did mention that last week I went and saw Thor: Love and Thunder. I put it on my Facebook that I saw it, and I wasn't going to post any spoilers or anything, because it is no secret that I really, really dislike Thor Ragnarok. I think that it is the second worst MCU movie. I don't want to get into it. I had several people say, you did that Elvis movie review, are you going to do a Thor Love and Thunder movie review? I don't think I'm going to. I don't think I'm going to do an episode specifically on it, because again, no spoilers. I also did not like Thor Love and Thunder very much. I think that it is better than Ragnarok, but not for the reasons you think. And the concept of spending an entire episode being angry and negative about a movie, that's like the whole point of what I've been trying to make when I talk about how critics and clickbait artists are poisoning opinions for views, and being hyperbolic, and being, yeah, they're fun to watch, and it's fun to see somebody get all worked up and everything, but I've decided in my personal life there are so many ups and downs and so much negativity in the world already that If you want to ask me as a person, like a person face to face, or like, chat with me privately, that's fine because you're asking for my opinion. But basically, just throwing a negative opinion out there, I have no problem. I want to try and focus more on public praise rather than public denigration. I don't want to be one of those internet mouths that the only thing they're known for is bitching about something else, or that when they don't like something, they really don't like something. So I think I'm gonna avoid doing a review. If you are interested and you actually do want to know my pros and cons, because there are some pros. If you want to know my pros and cons, we can do it in the comment section. You can hit me up privately on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, whatever. But I don't think I'm just gonna blast the review, because it would be heavily opinionated, and it would not be the positivity that I want to see, hopefully growing out of the communities. So that's that. All right. So speaking of the communities, last episode, the 150th episode, I asked for people to talk about, or to ask for topics, because I do get inspired to do particular episodes, now and again, like the Elvis review. Nobody asked for that, but I really wanted to tell people about it. Individual moments, like if we go and do something cool, or if something's upcoming, or a product comes in, or I get to do an unboxing or something, that's different than if I get to listen to what you guys want, listen to what the subscribers want, and focus on that for an episode. So I did the call out and said, hey, let me know what you guys want to hear about. And my dear friend, Nathaniel Sims, someone who actually suffered with me during the Hot Takes Hot Wing Challenge at GaryCon this year, actually put on there that he would like to know kind of what goes into the creation of an RPG source book. And I figure that is a cool enough topic, a tight enough topic, that I can give someone the quick 101. I can give you guys kind of the rundown of how I approach making an RPG source book, because there are many different facets to it, and luckily I am fortunate enough that I am not making it by myself. The only self-published one that I've ever done was for the DMs Guild, and even then, the DMs Guild handled most of the publication aspect of it. I am very, very fortunate insofar that the products that I make are on contract for other companies, so they handle a lot of the back-end stuff, the ordering of the printing, the graphic layouts, the final edit passes, all that stuff, the actual shipping the product to distributions and things like that. That's handled by people way better at that stuff than I am. So I'm going to focus specifically on the creation of the product, not the creation of the material, rather than the actual fabrication of the physical product itself. But that's going to be our topic for today. We're going to do an RPG Sourcebook 101. As I'm sure you already clicked on the thumbnail, so you know that was there. And I hope this will be helpful. I know that I am fortunate in the fact that I have got these companies that hire me to do this sort of thing, that I'm contracted for this work, and that I get a lot of support from the company staffs. But I want to make sure that we cover the bases as best as possible. So I would say that it all starts with an idea. That it really does kind of come down to if if I am contracted for a specific piece of work, like we want, I'm going to use fictitious terms. Don't read into this and think that this is a thing that's happening. But let's say someone says, I want a book 100% on mimics. I want to do a mimic source book. Then I now have a guideline. And then from the guideline, I will then build an outline of what is going to be in that product. An introduction chapter, a rules chapter, a stat block chapter, a additional material related to mimics, maybe a sample adventure or something like that dealing with mimics. Basically, I build up an outline almost like a table of contents. It doesn't need to be specific. It doesn't need to, unless there are things that the employer, the person who's told me to make this book, if there's specific things that they have to have in there, they want to have in there, then I make sure that those are bullet points in the outline. That it is no question, those things are part of the book. But if it's just an open thing, or if it's just my imagination, then it is, I just build the outline to include everything that I think I want in this book, and then I can either pare it down later or add more if it's too small. It becomes kind of a working list as I kind of plan it out. And then, depending on the circumstance, I pick a spot. I pick a point and dive in. For me, there's always a research period, and some of that includes if you're making something from scratch to make sure no one else has done it before. Because the last thing you want to do is accidentally plagiarize someone else's work, or come off as a less inspired version of maybe someone did maybe someone took, they made that book already, and it's amazing and it's brilliant and it is everything you want yours to be. So you decide to maybe come at it at a different angle. You change your concept. Instead of the complete guide to mimics, you go, I'm going to do the complete guide to, this other mimic guide is already out. So I go, okay, let's not do that. Let's do a complete guide. We'll take a lot of the same concepts, but we'll do oozes, puddings, and more. The life of a gelatinous cube, outside looking in. Whatever, or inside looking out. Whatever you want to do, you may have to alter things if someone's already done it before. Also, you might need to make sure that you can do it, especially if you're dealing with other people's properties. Now, if you're doing something that is your own idea, and it's not based off of someone else's property or a trademarked property, then you're probably good. You're probably fine in the clear to make whatever you want. One of the benefits of being a contracted writer, a contracted developer and designer, is that a lot of times the people contracting you have already worked out the legals. So like Renegade has all the legals worked out for Transformers and G.I. Joe and Power Rangers and stuff, the stuff that I work with. So when I say I've got an idea and I want to do this book, when I said I want to do a book, do a Power Rangers book called Across the Stars, and it's going to be based off of space, and it's going to have all of this stuff in it, plus rules for space travel in Essence 20 that maybe could be used with some of the other books if needs be. That's something that we can then approach the license holder and go, this is what we want to make. And depending on the license holder, they might ask you to make changes. They might say, yeah, that's fine, whatever. Or they may say, they might be extremely strict in what exactly you can and cannot use. That's all part of the background process. It's all part of the research of what you're going to build. Once you get to the point where you're like, all right, I am ready. I've done all my research. I've done all my background looking. I've done everything I need to do in the preamble of getting this book started. Thus begins the writing. The writing and the designing is obviously the long form, the part that takes the most time. And that's just a matter of there's only so many hours in the day. You can only type so fast. And you want to make sure that your wordings are tight. You want to make sure that, as best you can, that there's not a lot of wiggle room between rules as intended and rules as written, that hopefully they mesh as well as possible. And you put together your book. How you do it is kind of dependent on the person. Like myself, I like to start at the beginning and work my way through the entire book. Basically, I try to write it like I would consider someone reading it. That way, if there is going to be something that I know is going to need to be described later in the book, or if I come across a term that I haven't used yet before, I can put that definition there, because someone who's opens up this book for the first time and starts at page 1 and works their way through, they're going to run into the terminologies and the definitions and stuff in the same pattern. Barring something that's like, there's a specific chapter that you can refer to, that's when you use the dreaded page XX. So page XX is a writer kind of placemark, that means we don't know what page this information is going to be on yet, because the book's not laid out, the book's not finished. We don't, there are all these variables, so you put a page XX in there, and when it comes after layout and it comes for the final edit pass, that's when you fill in all those XXs, because you know where things are. It also can lead to problems if you miss that XX. So a lot of times in the final edit stages, there will be a complete cover-to-cover term search for XX or page XX, because you want to make sure that you eliminate all those instances. Otherwise, your book looks like, oh, hey, that is such a blatant typo. Like, if you have a different page there, like page 19, but it's actually page 20, sometimes a reader will go, oh, they must have put that page marker there, and then something changed during print process or during layout or whatever. But if you have legitimately a page XX in your manuscript, the reader just straight up knows that got missed. There's no mistake. That is straight up, you missed it. So what I do personally in my own Word program is I've got my page XX, or every version of XX actually automatically highlights itself. I've got that as a macro set in my Word programs, because that way, at a glance, because I don't really highlight anything else except for comments, at a glance, I can see if any XXs have been missed. So that's a little tip, just to make sure that you don't miss that kind of stuff. But I generally start at the beginning and just work my way through. I know some authors, some developers like to do, they'll tackle a particular chapter because it's an important chapter, or because it's a chapter that the rules involved in that chapter, the stats or the perks or the feats or whatever, they might be used in later chapters on both sides of where that is. So they might design that one first to have it as a reference point. It's not how I normally like to work, but I have in the past. In certain cases, you have to. That's just, you can't design one thing. If you need A plus B equals C, if you've got A, you can't just make C until you have B. So that's where, sometimes bopping around the table of contents, makes sense. Bopping around the outline. The coming up with the material, there's not a good, I know me personally, I draw a lot of inspiration from the consumption of media, whether it's TV, movies, comic books, novels, the occasional TikTok, basically any kind of media consumption can potentially spark an idea or a concept. Or maybe I'll be watching, like in the case of, if I know I've got a Power Rangers book coming that might be leaning towards a particular topic, I will find the Power Rangers comics that are involved. I will find the Power Rangers episodes that are involved in that topic, and I will just constantly consume them. It doesn't mean that I'm like sitting there with bated breath, like a just chomping on the bit, making sure that I got every detail. It just means that there might be something that jumps out that I go, ooh, 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 that's fantastic. That, for instance, the other day I was watching while I had some Power Rangers up on my on YouTube while I was making dinner. My hands were totally covered in like fish grease or whatever, and something came up in the show that I was like, oh, that's a perfect name and concept for a perk in the new book. And so I normally what I would do is I would write things down on a post-it note or digitally in my phone. But my hands were gross, so I basically just shouted for my son. I was like, Connor, come here! And he came here. He's like, what's up? And I'm like, do me a favor. I need you to text these words to me. And I told him the words, and he goes, anything else? I was like, no, just text me those words. And he's like, all right. And so what that did is that that little digital reminder, texted it to my phone, it pops up on my phone, so I know once I've got my hands clean and everything like that, that my phone's going to remind me, hey, you've got a message. I'm going to open that message. I see that message, see the words, and go, I remember, and then I go write it down as to what I'm going to be adding into the book. I do a lot of stream of consciousness notes. There's a lot of things that are. I mean, I can't show you half of these because there's a bunch of terms and stuff on there that people might go and like zoom in and figure out what I'm working on. But there's post-it notes all over my desk. It is a constant stream of thought as to how things come together. Sometimes you have to include things like either a source book. Just I might really decide, God, I hate. I don't know if I was working on the Play-Doh role-playing game, and man, I hate the Play-Doh Fun Factory, but it is part of canon. It is part of the Play-Doh universe. I gotta make rules for the Fun Factory. So there are times where your source book has to have certain things. You might not enjoy it. You as a creator might go, I don't see where the use of that is. But if the contractor knows, the license holder agrees, who knows where all that comes from, but it might be necessary that you make good cohesive rules to apply to the Play-Doh Fun Factory or whatever. Sometimes you are not designing for you are designing for a player that may enjoy that sort of thing. You try to design and develop and write toward the kind of mainstay audience. You don't want to try and aim towards the outliers. If you aim your terminology and your canon work and all that stuff and all your terms and rules and stuff to the lowest common denominator, or lowest non-common denominator, like the people who know nothing, then the book is going to end up coming off as overly simplistic or possibly even condescending if it sounds like you as a book is just talking down to people who just don't understand anything. But also the opposite is the same. If you make it too highbrow and too advanced and too crunchy, filled with all these little bits and bobs and inside jokes and all that stuff about the subject matter to appeal to just the super fans, then you're going to leave behind a huge section of the audience, a section of the readers that are going to read this and go, I don't understand half of what is there a primer for this book? Like, is there a book I got to read before this book? What you want to aim for is the middle of the road people. The people who are just going to get the product, read the product, hopefully enjoy the product, and hopefully use the product. Maybe not abuse the product. Like, I do not, when I'm designing, I do not design for power gamers. I don't write my rules with the concept of, I could do this. Because you could do anything with these rules. The whole rule number 0, the golden rule of any role-playing game is the game master can change the rules. Like, they can do what they need to do to have fun at their game. And if your table requires the game to be just wall to wall madness and over the top, and we can beat every monster in 1 second, and you're having a good time, then that's up to you. I'm just not going to design with that in mind. And that means I'm going to try my best to keep everything into that middle category of mainstream gamers, people that are playing to enjoy and have fun. I'm going to try to keep in mind that you don't want to make things super easy to break your system, but it does happen. And a lot of players do focus on that kind of thing. And you can't let yourself be disheartened if they have. If someone's found that magic combo, you can't be like, oh man, everything's broken, the world sucks, my game is terrible. You have to realize that most people aren't going to use that. Or, it's not like this role-playing game Sourcebook is going to get used once. Maybe they do it once and they get tired of it. When their character beats everything all the time, every day, eventually the game will die out around them. Their fellow players will look at them and go, hey, can you maybe let us have some of the limelight? Or that game will end, a new game will pick up, and then maybe the next time around, they'll go, I want to be more challenged, and they don't use that combo, or they don't access that thing that they view as broken. You can't, as a developer of a role-playing game, you can't look at something and go, oh my god, I hate the fact that everyone is using this to power game. Because that's up to them. If you were inviting them to your table to play with you, you could look at them as a player and go, I would rather you didn't make your character quite, maybe don't focus that hard on being the toughest dude at the table. Maybe I did not see those two combinations together. Maybe we'll take one or the other, or whatever. It's up to you and your table. It's up to you and your players. It also, there's that fine line of, you also don't want to look at your player and say, no, you can't do that because I don't like it. Come up with good reasons. Or if that's how your table runs, I might not like it very much to have someone just straight up say, no, I don't want you to do this. But have a dialogue. Communicate. Talk to your players. Talk to your GM. But when you're building the source book, unless you have something very specific that you are trying to build off of, like, for instance, when I do a Power Rangers game, when I do a Power Rangers source book, I have canon examples of things that I have to go to. I can't make someone like Goldar too weak. I can't make someone like your basic putty too tough, because there's canon examples of these guys fighting or being beaten or whatnot in the various media sources. And rest assured that if you stray from what is canon too far, the player base will recognize it, and they'll go, why is Goldar such a pushover? He's supposed to be one of Rita's toughest, gnarliest lieutenants, and we've got a bunch of level 2 guys that are pushing him over like that. That's a problem. That is an issue with building the canon incorrectly. If it's something that you're building on your own, then you've got your own parameters. You set what you want. Do you want this source book? Like, if you're making a source book, let's go back to the guide to mimics. You're probably going to want to make that source book as useful and universally accepted as possible. You're going to try and run the gamut from pathetic nothing mimics that low level or starting characters can deal with, all the way up to the avatar of the god of mimics, Mimicron or whatever, and that's for epic level campaigns to deal with at that level, and hopefully everything in between, making your book as useful and as accessible as possible to all players. Because again, the whole point is you want people to use the book as it's intended. if you are trying specifically to build a source book about the war in heaven or something, where like everything in this book is crazy epic powerful, you're gonna put a note on the cover that's like, rules for epic level campaigns, or characters that have reached 20, challenging characters that are 20th level, or whatever. As long as the expectations are set as to what you're designing, then you're good. You might be slimming down your audience, you might be making a particular, niche market. But if that's the book that you want to make, if that's the book that you're trying to build, then you set the expectations when you build the outline, and you try and stick to it to the best as you can. The last thing you want to do is build an epic level source book, and then, it hits shelves and people read it and whatever, and they go, yeah, our level 10 guys walked through all these monsters. These are way too weak. Which falls into the next part of making these source books, and probably one of the most important part, and that is playtesting. So there's two general mentalities of playtesting. Completely internal, and that means only people involved with the project or the company of the project. Basically, only insiders get to mess with, test, play, whatever. Or external playtesting, which means you're getting people involved that the only purpose they exist for this project is to test these rules, to play test these books. There's merits to both. I actually think that the first part, the internal playtesting, a lot of that can happen while the source book is being written, because you can take chunks of it and just do test sessions. Grab 2 or 3 of the people involved in the project and go, hey, let's fight Mimic A versus Mimic B, and throw in, and have a player character, a sorcerer of the Mimic path. Let's have them there, casting spells, and let's see how this goes. When you go to external playtesting, you want to have it as complete as possible, because you don't want them to focus on the stuff that's missing. You just want them to test the stuff that's there to see if it's broken, see if it works. And if there's parts missing, you can't expect their playtest to be all that fruitful if they honestly just don't have parts of the you can't expect someone to tell you how much they love your toy if you've removed half the pieces, because they're probably going to say there's parts of it that are cool, but it doesn't feel complete. There you go. And getting through the playtest process might be 2 passes, might be 3, might be a dozen. Just depends on, the work, depends on how skilled the playtesters are, depends on what kind of source book you're talking about. If it's mostly about narrative and plot structure, your playtesting is probably going to be a lot of reading to make sure that it makes sense. If it's something more like a tactical combat adventure or a simulation or something, then there's probably going to be a lot of testing needed, like actually the actual mechanics, the dice rolling, rather than just taking everything at, median value and being like, well, it works if everything's average. Maybe actually put it through a legitimate test, get real players to try it, make their decisions, that sort of thing, rather than just testing it in a kind of sterile mechanics environment. Get them to actually play a session. Get them to use it in their game. Run a game for your friends and throw your new monsters at them in an arena and see what happens. There's options there to see things how they actually function, because one of the things that I will say is, first off, no product ever survives contact with the fans untouched. Period. The fans will see things, they will find combinations, they will notice things that you didn't, because they are spending their money, they're spending their resources to get this product. It is important to them to really kind of get the most out of it, and that means that they're focused on aspects that you might have missed, which nature of the beast. Sometimes they're minor, sometimes they're major, sometimes it requires you to put out a digital errata that says, hey, thanks for all these little, things that you pointed out to us. Let's get them fixed, and then hopefully you get them fixed for the next printing, if there is another printing, if there is any printing. But the result is hopefully having a refined, a as close to a refined product as possible when it gets out into the public. And also, part of RPG Sourcebook, part of honestly, any kind of creative endeavor, you have to realize that there is no universal truth. Aside from like the math involved, there is no universal truth as to whether or not it is a good product. Some people look at like current D&D products that have sold millions of copies and go, I like the old stuff better. This doesn't work for me. I don't need this. Or, why would you buy a monster manual? I just build all my own monsters. All my monsters are homebrew. There's all these sorts of things that are out there, and that's really just, YTYC, your table, your call. But you still, as if you're actually making these products to try and get people to play, to try and get people to buy, to try and get people to consume them, you need to aim middle of the road. Don't go too deep. Don't go too light. Middle of the road, as best you can. I mean, if you're building a complex system, then you're building a complex system, and going into it that there are probably going to be fans that go, this is way too crunchy, way too many tables. Give me a simple die roll, give me a card mechanic, whatever. And if that's the case, that's fine, because you knew that was what you were aiming for. But don't be surprised if you're aiming for that middle of the road game and you end up kind of designing a little heavy. If you market it as a middle of the road, fun for everybody, a simplistic, easy to learn, hard to master, sort of thing, some of those readers and some of those reviewers might get a hold of this and go, that's a bit of a misnomer, it's really crunchy, or it took me a long time to figure this out, or maybe you have to do your own kind of how-to video to make sure that people understand what you're doing. There's a lot of resources out there for you to help administrate the acceptance of your book, of your product. And that's, I hate to say it, that's pretty much it, is research, outline, creation, playtesting, acceptance. And that last one's the hard one. That last one is the one that you have to just decide it is ready, as ready as it's going to be, and it's time to get it out into the public, because the public is going to adjust it. They are going to use it in their own way. They are going to homebrew it, and there will be people that hate it. It's just there is. You got to realize that's a necessary evil. And your whole hope is that all those vocal people that hate it get drowned out by the people who enjoy it. You don't necessarily need them to love it. It's nice to have people love your stuff, but the concept, you're not making this product with the concept of this is going to be someone's next favorite game. The concept is, I'm making a good game, a fun game, and I hope people enjoy it. If it happens to be someone's favorite game, if it happens to be their next favorite system or their next favorite source book, and they tell other people about it, you can be excited about that. You can wear it like a pin on your sleeve. If you win awards for it, like Ennies or things down the road, Origins Awards, that's just feathers in your cap. But you have to remember that there will be people that do not like what you're doing for whatever reason. And their reasons are their own, no less valid than anyone else's. But you don't have to necessarily always listen to them, especially if they deliver that information without any helpful advice. There's a difference between a creative critique, a helpful critique, and a hyperbolic, this is suck this is sucks this is sucks this sucks and is terrible, with no explanation, no concept. For all we know, that person's having a really bad day when they picked up that book. I've done it. I've gotten a product before that I sit down to read it, and I've had a, interrupted 10 times because my kids are fighting, or I'm dealing with a stomach bug, and I've had to put down the book 10 times because I don't feel well. Like, these are things that can get in the way, and sometimes that can be something that, when someone asks, "What'd you think of Bryan's Guide to Mimics?" and one guy goes, "Oh man, I couldn't finish it. I tried. It was just so dry and so boring. I kept falling asleep." Well, then what you find out is maybe that guy was just really tired. Maybe he was working 12-hour days, or maybe they were sick and had just recently got through COVID. Maybe that's why they kept putting the book down, weren't focused. You can't hold those negatives to heart, like every single one of them is the parameter in which you are being judged by. Most people will judge your product based off of their own usage, their own opinions, their own feels. They might be swerved a little bit or swayed by someone else's review, but at the end of the day, there will probably be people who see those reviews and then they go, "You know what, I'll make my mind up for myself," and then they get into it and they go, "Yeah, I don't know what that guy was talking about, this is fine." You're not writing for 100% of the fan base, for 100% of the people out there. Again, you're aiming for the middle. You want something that is accepted, something that works, something that functions, something that's fun. It'll be cool if it's groundbreaking. It'd be great if it was the kind of thing that people talk about constantly. But that shouldn't be what you are shooting for. And that you can shoot for it if you want, but that shouldn't be your minimum goal. It would be nice to get all those awesome accolades and have a product that, everybody talks about for now until the end of time. But what you want is a product that works, a product that functions, a product that makes the gamers and the people who buy it happy and have fun with it and use it the way it's intended. And you definitely don't want that product to be unfinished, broken, lackluster, missing parts that you wanted to put in there because you just decided to quit early. You want that middle road. You want that, and obviously we all want to be up here. I've been doing this for 20 years and I still want my products to be, I think I may have only had a couple of products that really sails up to this level. But you do set yourself up to make sure that you at least hit here. At least that middle of the road. People enjoy your stuff, hopefully. But that through playtesting you find out that it works. You find out that it's fun. You find out that it functions mathematically or dice mechanics or whatever. And that hopefully people want to use it. Because that's the other thing, is we could write source books all day long for things that nobody wants to use. I could make the Bryan's Guide to Chairs, and it could be the most functioning source book for chairs in role-playing games ever. But I'm willing to bet that it's not going to be a big seller, and there's not going to be a lot of tables out there where the DM goes, "Oh man, I forgot my Bryan's Guide to Chairs." We got to postpone the session tonight, guys, because I don't know how all the chairs work. Yeah, you can absolutely make that product, and it may even sell as a joke gift if you aimed it that way. But if you actually made a legitimate product that is not really all that useful, don't expect up here. if you're making something that you don't think people are actually going to use. Yeah, so that's really it. I can't say that Yeah, I would love to be able to get into the nitty gritty of how I pick playtesters, or when you've got a canon product that the company who owns the license is going to check against what you've written to make sure that you haven't screwed up the license or haven't screwed up canon and things like that. They're probably going to, but not every company is like that. Some companies just basically let you do your thing, and then should you mess up and utterly go against the grain of their canon or whatever, they will likely at some point they will denounce that product as not canon. They'll be like, yeah, it's a fine source book, but you can't take you can't take what happens in there to be true to what the rest of the universe does, or whatever. Or a worst case scenario, especially if you're contracted by that company, that if you aren't paying attention to the rules and you try to stray too far from what you're supposed to do in that outline, they might need you to change it. They might need you to remove it, or they might not publish. Like that, it could really lead to larger things if you really, really screw things up on the guidelines that you've been set. If you are a freelancer, this is something that has come up recently with other topics. If you are a freelancer and you are contracted to make a source book, there should be two very, very important things that you discuss with the person contracting you. One is your plus and minus on word count. If they say this book is supposed to be 65,000 words, you should ask them, okay, what's the range? Because obviously you're not literally going to hand them an exactly 65,000 word product unless you're being really weird and OCD about, those last few sentences, so you can make sure it's perfect. You're probably going to be within a certain range. And a lot of times that's a plus or minus percentage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. And that means that at 65,000, let's do a nice round. Let's do 60,000. Let's say at 60,000, 10% would be 6,000, 5% is 3,000. So it means that you could probably turn in anywhere between 57,000 words and 63,000 words. And during the edit and layout process with art and everything, they should be able to make that work within the boundaries of their book. They might have they might see plus or minus 1%, obviously a dramatically smaller number, but having those parameters and having that built into your contract will help you avoid arguments, avoid trying to get paid for words that you weren't supposed to write in the first place, or getting paid for words that you didn't actually put on the page, so you're getting overpaid for less work. These are things that you have to watch out for. That's number one, is definitely have that word count. If it is a project that of a specific definition, get a range. Don't get a single number, and definitely don't blast by that number and then expect to get paid for the overage. That's just shoddy work. The other thing is find out how many revisions you might need to make for the project. A lot of times companies will hire someone and not necessarily tell them that they might need to fix their work. If it gets into if it gets into edit and layout, then, and they find out this section's too long, or this section's too big, or the license holder says this monster's got to go. You can't expect to be asked to fix that. It's your manuscript, it's your project, it's your work. You can expect to get asked to fix that. And you can't necessarily assume that you're going to get paid for that time of fixing your own mistakes. especially if you made sure to put in a right to revision or a revision clause in your contract that says, I will correct up to 10% of the manuscript up to 2 times for as part of this charge. And what that means is that you've got a defined amount of time and effort that you will use on this manuscript for the amount of money that they've promised you or contracted you for. And what that does is that protects you from having to rewrite this source book 10 times before you get paid, and it also protects the contractor that they have a defined set of parameters in your contract that should you not do that, or should you complain after the fact, well, I didn't get paid for all my revisions. If it's in their contract that those first 2 revisions are part of your initial pay and you signed it, it protects them as well. So that part, I know that's not part of really the sourcebook design aspect of it, but that is an important part of any kind of paid project, in my opinion, is to make sure that you've got that stuff taken care of and in line. Because sometimes even the most trustworthy of employers, should hardship set in, should problems arise, should legal matters arise, you need to be protected, they need to be protected, everything needs to try and run as smoothly as possible. I hope that was helpful. I know I kind of ran off the mouth a little bit, but it is an important topic, and it is a topic that I'm excited about, and it's a topic that I use almost every day. So I am super happy to give that information to you, and I hope that you guys out there stay safe, wear a mask when you need to, get vaccinated, get boosted, and make some other people happy, because the world can be a dark place. But then one of the best ways to do that is get together, have fun, and play some games. We will see you next week.